Welcome to the Fran Snyder Podcast, where I talk to artists and music fans to explore how music connects us through great stories and experiences. Brought to you by the Listening Room Network. Today's guest, Grace Morrison. Welcome to the Fran Snyder Podcast. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. How are you?
Good, good, good. I see a very Cape Cod blanket behind you.
My mother made it.
Yeah, excellent.
It's so funny that you say that because I did a live stream the other night with some folks from California, and they kept telling me that things that I did were so Cape Cod.
Oh,
and
really?
What was it that was so Cape Cod about me? So maybe by the end of this, you can tell me.
Well, I see. I wouldn't know what Cape Cod-ish was. That was kind of a joke. I have no idea if that's really a Cape Cod-ish blanket.
I'm going to take it.
But I just meant in the sense that I'm in Florida and you're probably somewhere cold. And that's, I would not have that kind of a blanket where I live.
That's a valid point.
So while we're on that topic, though, so, what are some of the things that they said were Cape Cod-ish? I'm curious.
Well, it started with, they had commented that that a song I had done had a very New England style to it.
Mm.
And then it was something about a sense of humor. And then somewhere in there, my accent as well. Although I don't think I have a very strong Massachusetts accent.
No, it's definitely on the lighter side. Definitely on the lighter side. So excellent. So you were born and raised in Cape Cod.
Yep.
Have you lived anywhere else, or have you been there the whole time?
I have been here the whole time.
Yeah.
My family has, traced back to the Pilgrims, so I'm pretty stuck here.
Gotcha. So if you go back far enough, they just keep you there. You can't.
Oh, yeah. It's ingrained.
The roots are too deep. I love it. So how long have you been, when did you turn pro as a singer-songwriter? Did you go to school for music at all? Are you self-taught? How does it start for you?
I did, yeah. So I often tell people that's the only skill I have in life. I broke my ankle walking. I truly have one skill, and it is music.
I know that was supposed to be funny, but it probably shouldn't be. I guess at the time it probably wasn't.
I can see the humor now.
Yeah.
You can. I graduated from the University of Massachusetts in music. I studied jazz piano. Mm-hmm. Jazz was never really something that spoke to me, though. But, when you go to school for music, you're kind of torn between jazz or classical. And it's funny because I've written songs since I was a kid. This is the only thing I've ever really done. But to say that I actually had a clear vision of what I wanted to write about and who I was as an artist, I would say is the past 5 years.
Okay. And so, but how long have you been gigging and touring and that kind of stuff?
I'm totally going to date myself, 20 years.
20 years. Wow. Okay. So you started when you were 4. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. So, all right. So you've been basically a professional musician for a long time, but really sort of came into your own as a songwriter with that kind of a focus only in the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So tell me, so you've had some pretty cool career highlights. So this was probably part of that musician past as opposed to the songwriter past. Touring with Eddie Money and some others. You want to talk about maybe some of those highlights?
Gosh, yeah, so I was 17 and I got on a tour bus with a bunch of what I interpreted as old guys, and I had no idea who any of them were. Not a clue that I was sitting on a bus with the guy who wrote Jungle Love for Steve Miller Band and the lead guitarist for Badfinger and the drummer for AC/DC. I had no idea. So I couldn't even be overwhelmed by it,
So, but hang on. How do you get this gig and not know what you have?
So my cousin has been involved in music for a long time and had put on a bunch of charity concerts and befriended these people. And he just said, hey, do you want to go on tour? And so I graduated high school and I said, sure, I'll get on a tour bus. And then I did.
That's amazing. So,
cool.
So you did this for how long? How was that, one tour with all of these groups? Was it a super group type of thing?
It was a super group type of thing, yeah. So the first year was those 3 guys that I mentioned, and Carmine Appice, the guy who wrote "If You Want My Body," and I didn't. And then Eddie Money was a couple years after that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll tell you I have a short Badfinger story. So you were with Joey Mullen, who I guess, what was his role in Badfinger?
He's the guitarist and
Guitarist, right?
yeah.
So in 1995, I won an award called Florida's Best Solo Act. So I'm dating myself now. And the award ceremony was in Orlando at the Hard Rock Cafe, and the person who you know how they have celebrity announcers and guests and whatever, is they bring out a celebrity to introduce the next award and the next artist, that kind of thing. And the guy who introduced me was the drummer from Badfinger, and I've forgotten his name, but the guy was like maybe 3.5 feet tall, just a short human being. And he gets up on stage and he's just totally drunk. It's an award show. There's no pressure. And he's just presenting, right? So he's just drunk and he can barely read my name. It's like, next artist is Fran Snyder, you know? And I went up there, and there's a few stories that diverge from there. But yeah, that was my experience with Badfinger, was being introduced by a very, very drunk short man.
I love it. So the other funny part of that tour that there was so many salacious things that I observed that I don't tend to share those stories.
That'd be a challenging thing to see as a 17-year-old girl, right?
Well, I learned a lot about human beings on that trip because I grew up in a very, very religious household. Wow. I had no idea that people did the things that they do.
Yeah.
But so before we went on that tour, I had just watched Spinal Tap for the first time.
Excellent. That's a good warm up.
And a couple weeks into the tour, I can't think of his name right now. He wound up being a singer for Quiet Riot, but he plays like the rock star that they see in the hotel.
Kevin Dubrow.
And so anyway, He was on this tour with us. And the week that he joined, the tour buses left us in the middle of a parking lot in the desert because they hadn't been paid. So it was like our own real life Spinal Tap.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, I can't imagine being a young woman experiencing that era, because this was before cell phones, right? Like before they were ubiquitous, and so they could do a lot without having worries about evidence slipping away from the tour bus.
Or like a 17-year-old girl by herself on Halloween at 11 p.m. at the Hard Rock Hotel parking lot. Like, where do I go? It was terrifying.
Wow. So, all right. So that went on for, you said, a year or two, touring with these supergroups. What did you transition into after that?
College.
Yeah.
I went to school, and I think at that time I had it in my mind. I don't know if it was a combination of touring with like rock and roll groups, and my dad always telling me, you got to be a blues singer. From the moment I picked up a guitar, my dad said, you got to sing the blues. Everybody loves the blues, and then you can do whatever you want, but you got to do the blues. And I hated the blues so much because that's all he would say to me. I hated it. I was like, Dad, nobody even likes the blues.
Right.
And so anyway, college for me was just like fighting with that thing in my head because I knew I wasn't a blues singer and it didn't feel right. And, so I was studying jazz, still trying to write songs, but it was hard when I had all those different things in my head, everybody else's voice in my head telling me what I should be playing.
And so what were you listening to at this time? So you're getting pressured into jazz and blues, but what's in your heart at that time?
Tori Amos.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, and honestly, your Lilith Fair singer-songwriters, that was what
Sarah
really...
McLachlan, and yeah.
From the get-go, man, that's how I learned how to play. I would watch those women play because I had only played the piano at that time, and I thought, oh, the guitar is what I should do. So I'd watch them and copy what they did.
Yeah.
And so that, I should have known that was really where my heart was.
Yeah. So, all right, so you're listening to Tori Amos and Sarah McLachlan and having to do jazz and blues. So how do you reconcile that? Will you just suffer for a while and eventually quit, or what?
I slogged through. I got my bachelor's degree, magna cum laude.
All right.
With jazz, although it never really gelled for me. And then I worked at a Renaissance fair. And I think, honestly, it was the Renaissance fair that changed it for me because Celtic music and so much of what you hear at a Renaissance fair is story songs, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, it started with trying to write about the wives of King Henry VIII.
Nice.
I know, and it's a complete nerd, but that's what got me started.
I'm trying to think of what's his name? Is it Peter Moon? The I'm Henry VIII, I am that guy.
Yeah.
Was that like your starting point there, or?
No, I remember distinctly walking down the street of the Renaissance Fair in my whole garb and imagining that I was Anne Boleyn and how heartbroken she must have been. And I wrote a song called Old Adam about Anne Boleyn.
Nice. So you go from being a musical imposter to a professional imposter at Celtic fairs, right? All right. So take us from there. What's next? I like the way this is going so far.
So then I met another girl at the fair who played the violin, and we started performing together. And then a guy I had gone to college with joined us, and we made a 5-piece band, which was called Grace and the RSO.
Okay.
And we got a lot of people. I mean, it was kind of in the vein of Nickel Creek, I suppose.
Okay. What does RSO stand for?
Really small orchestra.
Love it.
And we kept getting people saying, "Oh, you should be going to NERFA. Why aren't you going to these Folk Alliance things?" And I didn't have an answer for it. And then the band kind of imploded, as most 5-piece marriages do. And but I had really grown as a songwriter at that point, and started attending the NERFA conference.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that your listeners will know what I mean.
Yeah, that's the Northeast Regional Folk Alliance. It's one of the regions of Folk Alliance. They have their own conference, usually in November, when conferences are possible. And it's a lovely time, a really nice conference to go to. Is that where you learned about Listening Room Network and concerts in your home, or?
No, my husband, we've been married for 3 years, and he works on the computer. And to give himself brain breaks, he would just like delve into musical things to try to help me.
Okay.
And he found it for me.
Oh, excellent. All right. So tell me what NERFA was like for you.
Well, I felt like a big imposter, I think, the first time. but it was just seeing this hotel room full of people like me that wrote songs like me. It just felt like, okay.
You found your people.
And I'm moving in the right direction.
Yeah. It's an amazing feeling for a lot of people when you go to one of these conferences, especially the smaller ones, where you find a lot of like-minded people. Everybody feels like an imposter, and you find out that you're not alone. We're all imposters if we're stretching at all. So those conferences are wonderful to attend. So what were your results from NERFA? Was it just like establishing a comfort base so you could go back again? Or did you feel like you had some fireworks, some gigs that came out of it, relationships?
Oh, it's funny how each of these regional conferences just has its own character. Mm-hmm. And the more I've written, the more I've found that we kind of full circle here, that the New England scene isn't necessarily where my music sits really well. I've had much like Swerfa and Surfa, I think have more of a country vibe to them, which seems to be where I'm sitting musically.
Yeah, let's explain those. Swerfa is Southwest Regional Folk Alliance, usually in Austin, but covers sort of like this central southern part of the United States. And Surfa is the Southeast Regional Folk Alliance. That's actually my home region. And they definitely have an emphasis on traditional folk and Americana. Anything with the banjo for sure is welcome.
Yes. I think for me, the biggest thing, however, that came out of NERFA specifically was I hooked up with this woman named Betsy Siggins, she was like Joan Baez's roommate and friends with Bob Dylan. And she's kind of like the grandma of the Cape Cod singer-songwriters.
Yeah.
And she just fights for you. And so for me, she could hear something in my songwriting, and she kept emailing Laurie McKenna relentlessly. And because Laurie McKenna is from about an hour away from me, and finally got her to agree to do some writing with me. So that was my big thing that came out of NERFA, was getting to write with Laurie.
Nice. And you did you tour with Laurie, or what did you strictly write?
We just wrote.
Okay. But you had some success there. You had a single that was number 2 on the folk DJ chart?
Not the one that I wrote with her, but subsequently I did, yes.
Oh, okay. Sweet. Yeah.
But, oh no, I was going to say that writing with her even more just kind of solidified for me the type of story songs that I like to write.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was having somebody who's had that level of success kind of validate what you're doing is pretty cool.
Yeah. So tell me, like, when you're writing with Lori, because every time I write with somebody new, I learn something. I learn a trick, or I learn something that I was doing that made things harder than it needed to be. Do you have like any takeaways of writing with Lori, like where something clicked?
Yes, there were a couple of things. The first thing is, you know, I mentioned that I studied jazz. And so I'm constantly like putting extra chords and things. I'm like, oh, could we do this and this and this? And she's just like, no, man, the 1-4-5. Simplify it. And the other thing, I think prior to that, and you might, this might resonate with you, is I always used to write when I felt like I had a song. And I heard, I think it was at NERFIT, Dar Williams was the keynote and talked about waiting for the creative window to open. Lori kind of is like, that's baloney, just write. And so that's made a huge difference for me, because some days I don't feel like writing, but I sit down and I do. And I've actually written some of my better songs that way, you know, instead of waiting for it to come to me.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, when you force yourself to write, especially if you do it on a schedule, if you do it like you treat it like a job, this is my profession and I have to dedicate time to it, whether I feel like it or not, just like any other job, right? This idea that, you know, you're a songwriter and you're only going to write when you're in the mood for it. Well, that's not a professional. That's, you know, you might get lucky and strike gold and things fall into place for you. But, you know, the idea of showing up every day means that you have more chances to be inspired, right? And
exactly.
Writing.
I was thinking, you know, I want to tell the world I'm a songwriter, then I'm going to be a songwriter, because my dad always used to say, he would say, like, what does a singer do? She sings, you know, and
right.
So every day I say that to myself and sit down and write, because songwriters like Lori, that's what they do. You know, the Nashville songwriters, they go to an office and
they take it seriously. They put their time into it, whether they feel like it or not, and then they hit publish. That's my part. That's my challenge. Is like the perfectionist. Like, I don't want to leave it alone. There's always a reason to keep working on the song instead of putting it out there. So, do you struggle with that kind of stuff at all?
Not so much lately, because so this whole time period from March to now obviously has been kind of depressing. And the thing that has gotten me out of that is the songwriting group that I joined. And so the challenge, every week you have to write the song or you get kicked out of the group. And I've never been in a club before. I desperately don't want to get kicked out.
Yeah.
But I also share the song every week with my Patreon subscribers. So I have to hit publish.
Gotcha.
I have to, because I've told them that they're going to get a song every week.
Great. Yeah, that's wonderful, like positive pressure on yourself. So who runs this group that you're part of? Is that secret or?
No. Lacey Williams runs it. She's a singer-songwriter out of Utah. And we met at the Dripping Spring Songwriters Festival, which was amazing. Have you ever
where does that happen? What state is that in?
In Texas.
In Texas, okay.
Dripping Springs, Texas. And holy smokes, what a wealth of amazing songwriters.
Yeah.
But like the prompts are they're challenging, like robot.
Does she come up with the prompts, or is there a committee? Does everybody submit prompts and then
she does? Yeah, she sends them. Yeah.
Excellent.
The coolest thing.
Yeah, my first experience with that was going to SWRFA in Austin, and Dallas Allen, who was running that conference, I think borrowed the idea from somebody who runs, I forget the name of the thing up in Michigan. But essentially, when you register at the desk and you get your badge and all that stuff, they have a mason jar full of these tiny little strips of paper. And you've been there, right? So yeah, you take a piece of paper from the jar when you sign up, and that's your songwriting assignment for the weekend. And somehow, some way, during a conference, while you're schmoozing and staying up late and going to seminars and talks and maybe having a little bit of fun, you've got to find time to write a song by Sunday morning so you can play it for everybody at the conference. And that is scary. And the first time I did it, I failed. I just, I didn't really know what Sunday was going to be like. And it was just so much pressure. And I just kind of, I didn't do it. But the next year I went back. I was just like, okay, I'm going to get this thing done. And my prompt, I'll stop the story here, but my prompt was, oh yeah, I'm going to rub that magic.
Rub
that magic. And I wrote the song, and it's turned out to be one of my best tunes in terms of fun factor.
That's such a funny prompt.
Yeah, I saw that, and I tried to make it something other than what it needed to be, what it was begging to be, and so at some point I gave up on that. I'm just gonna let the song. I didn't pick the title. I'm just responsible to write the song. So I wrote the song, and it was a hit. Everybody was singing it to me at the end on Sunday afternoon.
Now I need to hear it. I want you to send it to me after.
Okay, I'll do it. If you are enjoying this podcast, can you pause for a moment to like, review, and subscribe? Please help the world discover our music community and the wonderful artists we support. Your feedback makes a difference. All right, so at some point you discover a listening room network because of your husband's industrious online behavior. And had you heard of other house concert websites at the time? Was this like a totally bizarre discovery, or
I naively thought that the only way to achieve house concert gigs was at these folk conferences. I thought that, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Not a clue. And it was just such an amazing feeling, because I think prior to that I had only been to NERFA and hadn't had much success getting booked there. Yeah. And so finding Listening Room Network just made such a huge difference for me.
So cool. So tell me about that experience. So you first log in, you create your profile, and you start reaching out to hosts. Did it take a while before you felt like you were connecting, or did stuff start happening right away?
No, I think right away we got some bookings.
Yeah.
And actually a couple house concerts that I had performed at already went on and helped me out with giving me reviews, but I felt like I got some good traction from the get-go.
Nice. So you did a couple of tours, or?
So I only successfully completed the one full house concert tour because it was January of this year.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The entirety of 2020 was booked on Listening Room Network.
Oh, so you had a lot of bookings that you had to cancel. Okay. Yeah, that's such a bummer. Stay on those hosts. A lot of them have sort of checked out, and they're just, I'd say like a third of them are like, don't talk to us until this is over. And then there's a third, they're on the fence. They're looking for positive signals. They're like, they want to book spring and summer, and they're just waiting for some sort of positive signal. And then there's a chunk of them who have just like, you know what, we'll do it outside. We'll find a way. And so there is still some activity going, but I would say, any of the gigs that you canceled, stay on them to rebook, just a year, just push it a year if you can, as opposed to canceling and then trying to reconnect vaguely in the future. It's just great if you can say, we were going to do May 2020. Can we do May 2021?
Yes. And for the most part, those hosts have said to me, let's pencil in same date here.
Excellent. That's what we were encouraging people to do. And we just obviously don't know how well they respond to that. So that's great. I'm glad to hear that. So what are you working on right now?
I've got a couple of things. I'm in the studio working on a new album, which feels so good. It feels so good because this year could have really felt yucky. But I had a meeting with a bunch of singer-songwriters that I didn't know. And one of them said, why are we all talking about what we can't do? Why aren't we talking about what we can do? And I got to me like, yes, of course. So I went downstairs and I started noodling around with recording myself. And at first I reached out to my producer and I said, let's just do a 5-song EP. And it's going to sound kind of like Laurie McKenna production. What we have now is a 13-song full-length album, fully produced. Sounds nothing like Laurie McKenna. And I can't stop writing. So maybe it will be 20 songs. I don't know.
Fantastic. So are you, maybe you could do like a bonus EP for your Patreon fans, right?
That's a good idea.
Only for them.
That is a good idea.
So, but you said you were just starting to record, but now it sounds like you've got all this production planned, or you're already doing.
Planned. So we have done basic tracking for all of those songs, just me and the guitar and drum and bass. And we have a date booked for next week to start adding on some
Excellent.
tasty layers.
Excellent. And how are you funding this? Was it Kickstarter or Patreon or credit cards?
Has yet to be seen.
Okay.
I had some money saved for travel for this year.
You're the one who managed to save some money. Okay. I was wondering, somebody out there must have had.
Not much, but a little. The funny thing that you might appreciate, I've been working, a friend of mine she's done promotions for businesses and products, and she wanted to see if her sales skills could translate to music. And we had our first meeting, and she said, okay, so help me understand, how do you make money?
This meeting is over. Get out.
I don't know, because I just got a surcharge for trying to cash my 3-cent check from Spotify. So right. I don't know.
Right. Yes.
Anyway, what was the question? Oh, how am I funding this? So pieces at a time. And gotcha. I do every week I call it my virtual world tour. And so the tips from that are all going right into the recording and the money from my Patreon.
And so how are you doing your live streams? What format have you chosen? Which site, basically, all that stuff? We're
on StreamYard, which I'm really enjoying playing with, because you can do so many cool things with graphics, even people who have no skills with it.
Yeah.
And there's no latency. Have you used it?
No, I remember, I think in the early days of COVID, I think, there was some buzz about it, and I checked it out, and they were having bandwidth issues at the time. So I walked away. Oh. So I'm glad that they've turned the corner on that, and they're doing well.
Yeah. I tell my guests each week to make sure we're hardwired to the internet, which instantly I had forgotten you could do. And so we're doing that. And I've had only one issue, and that was when the person couldn't hardwire, and they were in the mountains in Arizona and had no Wi-Fi. Otherwise.
So hang on, you're saying the other person, are you?
Yes.
Are you playing at the same time, like playing together, or?
No, in the round.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yep. And I've had up to four of us on the screen. So we've had no issue with that.
Excellent. So is that sort of the primary reason to use StreamYard, is to kind of do these multi-performer location types of things?
That's how it started for me, but then I'm able to simultaneously stream to 10 different pages. So it's going to my YouTube, my personal Facebook page, their page,
Fantastic.
Twitch. It can go everywhere at once.
And are you using something like OBS or one of those platforms to get the original signal in there, or are you just going straight from your computer to StreamYard?
Yep. I'm just using a Scarlett interface, and I put my mixer through the Scarlett, but some people are just using their phone. Okay.
Tell me about the Scarlett interface.
It's like a $200 little interface that plugs into your USB. And so you could either plug your mic and your guitar straight into that.
So it's got how many inputs?
Mine has 2, but they have bigger ones.
Okay.
But also, like, I use my mixer, and I plug that into the Scarlett, and then I've got all the channels of my mixer.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty easy, because I'm not good at that sort of thing.
Yeah. So one of your questions to me was how to energize younger folks to join the house concert movement. And that's been a fascinating subject for many years. And the question often comes to me from our house concert hosts. They're people who are often in their middle age, they're in their 50s, even 60s, and they're like, how can we get young people to start attending our concerts? And the short answer is you can't. That doesn't mean, and I don't mean that in a hardcore, like nobody outside of your age group is ever going to attend your events, because there are many house concerts who have a wide variety of ages. But in general, it's a super upstream type of way to swim, because when you just think about psychology, when you go out to have fun, when you go out with your friends, do you want to hang out with people that look like your parents or your grandparents or whatever, So I think the core of what I want to get to is finding and inspiring young people to host house concerts so that they will invite their cohort and their friends so that they're not swimming downstream or upstream and trying to get people they're not connected to attend.
Right.
House concerts, the first time you're invited to one, it's weird enough when you're invited by somebody you know really well, your next door neighbor saying, hey, we're having a musician in our living room. You're like, what? So it's such a novel thing, even amongst close friends, the idea that you're going to convert, that a 55-year-old man is going to convert 23-year-old women or men to attend their house concerts. That's a hard sell. So the direct answer to your question is, yeah, we absolutely have to find younger folks who get it. And that's the challenge, right? Because when you're young, I think in general, it's people who listen intently to music, like what's expected at a house concert. They're a minority at any age,
That's what I was just going to say, because it sounds to me like a basic human psychology. Like, how do you even get a human to appreciate the value of the product, right? And then to be open to listening to new music. That is the hard thing to get people to do something new.
Right. And I think the big part of this is finding, just like we do with people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, is you find people who are already connected, people who are friendly, they have a social circle, they have a little bit of influence, so that it's not a nightmare begging strangers to attend their house concerts. And it's not the unsafe deal where you're treating your house like a public venue and you're inviting strangers and putting up posters around town, which we super discourage. We would rather you be small and intimate and grow organically and have your friends invite their friends and like, hey, I just went to this, to my friend's house and they had this really cool thing. You have to come next time. And that can happen at any cohort, at any age group, but it's a matter of finding the right people. So for artists, in terms of independently and through our website, what we want to do is enable you to have a page that appeals to newbies. So you're not just reaching out to people in our network who are already hosting shows, but also using Listening Room Network and sharing that through whatever social media you use, where your friends are, especially people in your age cohort, as well as younger fans on your mailing list who've discovered and fallen in love with your music. You take them from a fan to a house concert appreciator, as opposed to reaching out to strangers who don't know you or your music and trying to get them to experience not only new music, but a new type of concert type format that they've, those two things, it's a reach for somebody you're not connected with. So that's kind of where we are. We want to, sort of tweak the pages that we already have on the Listening Room site, the ones that are designed to connect you with the hosts in the network. We want you to be able to share that through your mailing list, through emails, through social posts, and say, listen, I'm doing this really cool thing that you may not have experienced before. If you're interested, reach out, click on this page, and I'll send you information about how you can experience this, and maybe we can create this in your own space. So that's something that you can do without us. You can do that on your own and say, hey, here's a page on my website about house concerts. And a lot of artists are already doing that and trying to recruit their fans. But what I think we offer as a network is social proof that it's not just this artist doing this weird thing. It's like, it's a movement. It's artists and people and music fans all around the world are already doing this, and you can sort of join in the fun, and you're not going to be weird for doing this. There's plenty of, cool people already doing it. So I think social proof is a big thing. We never want to be most people don't want to be the first to do something, and
it's
they
like
don't want to.
Jar.
Exactly. You've got to prime the tip jar, put some money in there. And I think you have to do that with your fans as well. So if you have any feedback, either now or, as you think of it, feel free to reach out to me anytime, because we're really looking to enhance what we do. And I really believe that, on the other side of this epidemic, I really think house concerts are going to lead the way. I think they're going to have to lead the way, because so many commercial venues, the places that need to make money, are going to fold if they haven't already. They're not going to make it through.
I think three of the venues that I played at on this last tour are already closed.
Yeah. And some of them will be able to come back, but I think house concerts, they both have the responsibility and the opportunity to really, help to be part of something pretty magical once we get to the other side of this pandemic. So we want to be ready for that, and we want to be able to, sort of supercharge whatever efforts you're making to get back on the road. And the last thing I'll say about that is we want to really encourage hosts to work together so that artists are putting together better plans. And maybe one, when you connect with this one host, it could automatically lead to 2 or 3 gigs, as opposed to having to fight for each individual gig on a tour. We want to help them connect and find ways to easily work together when their musical tastes and their calendars can align.
And I will say that I did experience that when I booked my tour.
Yeah.
Most of those hosts were really helpful in connecting me to others. So there's a lot of that happening. Yeah.
And we just want to supercharge it, because again, I just really think that this is going to be the most important thing for artists who want, and some artists are just like, you know what, the road was never that great, and I'm really enjoying playing from my living room. And there's going to be a chunk of artists who are going to say that, or they're going to raise the bar and say, you know what, I love the tour, but I'm not going to do it the way I used to do it. I'm not going to do prospect tours where I lose money strategically so that I can build an audience and come back and build and make it profitable over time. A lot of artists are going to say, you know what, no, it's got to be profitable out of the gate. I'm not going to go and spend weeks and weeks touring and weeks planning to just break even if everything goes right.
Right.
So I think it's an opportunity for us to, for the artists who want to keep touring, who want to get back to it after this long break. I think we have the opportunity to create a really energetic and fruitful way to get there.
Yes. And you've created such an amazing, amazing resource, as you probably know, because you're a singer-songwriter. It's the most wonderful thing I think I've seen.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. I feel a sort of responsibility to take it up a notch over the next 6 months and just be ready because we're not investing into live streaming. I think at some point we may partner with somebody, but we're not a technology company. We're really at the root of what we do. We're a connection company, and I want to focus on that rather than trying to become some streaming platform. There's already tons of investment and tons of talented people doing that. So we're really just kind of like looking at the future and looking what's going to be necessary for that time. So thanks for being a part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's fantastic to finally chat with you after just seeing your smile a couple times on the website when you come through. So, and of course, if you ever get to St. Petersburg, Florida, definitely would love to see you. Grace Morrison, thanks for joining me today, and we'll try to send some people your way.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Fran Snyder Podcast. Please subscribe, like, or share to help your friends discover this community. Also, I'd love to hear from you with any feedback or suggestions you have. And if you'd like to learn more about house concerts and listening rooms around the world, please visit and join listeningroomnetwork.com. You can email me from there. See you next time on the Fran Snyder Podcast.